Welcome to the Infographics channel. Today we will discuss the infographic titled 150 Years of Exports. Merchandise exports share 1870 to 2022 inch published by Visual Capitalist based on data from the Peterson Institute for International Economics, World Trade Organization. The authors of the graphic note that the world export powers of 1870 have been replaced by modern economies. The graphic covers the time period of the last 152 years to the year 2022. The chart shows 5 export powers: Great Britain, Japan, Germany, the United States, China, and the 6th category, Rest of the World, which presents all other countries except the 5 mentioned. Let's follow this chart chronologically. 150 years ago, one small European country, Great Britain, generated a quarter of the value of world exports. At that time, Germany accounted for 13% of exports, the United States for 5%, China for almost 3%, and Japan for 0.1%. It should be taken into account here that Great Britain was then the administrator of the British Empire, which at that time governed 24% of the Earth's land surface and dominated the world ocean. 23% of the world's population lived within the British Empire as of 1913. At the same time, German colonies in Africa included today's Cameroon, Namibia, Tanzania, Togo and their adjacent areas, and in Oceania, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Samoa, the Marshall Islands, Palau, and Nauru. In terms of population, area and potential, it is definitely smaller than the British Empire. At that time, the United States was a local power and had been independent for 100 years. China was at the height of decline, as evidenced by the famine in the years 1876 and 1979, the number of victims of which was estimated at 13 million people. At this time, Japan is a closed island country, anxiously watching the actions of European powers in China's ports, but capable of taking over Taiwan in skirmishes with the latter. The share of other economies in world exports at this time is 54%. From the beginning of the 20th century, the share of United States exports began to grow significantly, reaching its peak during World War II, accounting for approximately 20% of goods in world trade. At the same time, the decline in importance of Great Britain began, which continues to this day. By 1990, Germany was on par with Great Britain, accounting for approximately 18% of world trade in goods. Japan's share increases through the 2030s, and China's share will decline steadily through the 2070s. It is worth noting a significant increase in the share of other countries, which reaches its peak just after World War II, about 70%. What happens after World War II? It depends on how we read the data from the chart. We will soon notice that broad context is important in data analysis. This is one of the reasons why we meet on this channel, to enrich each other with different perspectives on the same data in the comments below the material. It would seem that the main winner of World War II, the United States, lost its share to Japan and Germany. From the war disaster until the late 1980s, Japan increased its position among world exporters to almost 10%. But since the peak, which was largely fueled by the development of the electronics industry, Japan's share of exports has been declining, and some analysts note the beginning of an unprecedented, even historic decline in Japan's importance since this breakthrough. At the same time, defeated Germany rebuilds its economy to such an extent that in the 1970s it equalized the United States in exports. You know from history lessons that since World War II, Germany and Japan have been occupied by 4 allied countries: the United States, the Soviet Union, Great Britain and France. Some say that the occupation lasted until 1990, when the Treaty of the Final Settlement with respect to Germany was signed and from which the unification of East and West Germany took place. However, there are voices, including from the Germans themselves, that the real influence of the Allied countries continues. Here's an interesting fact. Some people note that, in a similar way, it is difficult to decide today whether and to what extent the American economy has been linked to Great Britain since the American Revolution, especially when we look at the position of the city and New York in global financial flows. When we look at the exports of Germany and Japan after World War II, we can assume that their exports go to the account of the United States. After all, Germany then implements the Marshall Plan, and Japan is managed by General MacArthur, and the United States takes over the management of Japan's defense. Together, these three countries, the USA, Germany and Japan, accounted for approximately 30% of world trade by 1990. Since the 1990s, China's importance in world exports has increased significantly, reaching almost 15% in 2022 and becoming number one. Behind China on the podium are currently the United States, accounting for almost 9% of world trade in goods, followed by Germany with 7%, then Japan with over 3%, Great Britain with 2%, and the rest of the world with almost 65%. Here again we must remain vigilant. We have just noticed that the economies of Germany and Japan have been harnessed to the American economic machine. Moreover, we know from analyses of other materials that the increase in China's share in global exports is strongly correlated with foreign direct investments in this country. Therefore, it can be concluded that without the increase in FDI, there would not be such a significant increase in China's importance in global exports. And if we go deeper into the data on the countries of origin of investments flowing into China, we will notice that about 5% of investments flow directly from the US, from Germany and about 2% each from Japan. And some people will think that this adds up to about 10% of investment in China. But it is important to note that 50% of foreign investment in China comes from jurisdictions such as Hong Kong and Macau. Despite Chinese control, these are financial hubs that have enjoyed significant involvement of American and British capital for decades. From the point of view of Chinese statistics, it is better to show investments from Hong Kong as investments from Asian countries and territories rather than from European countries or the USA. The year 2023 is unprecedented in terms of the decline in foreign investment in China. If this was not a one-year departure from the trend, it is necessary to monitor how the outflow of FDI from China will affect the share of Chinese exports in world trade. Please note that the US and European countries are investing in China, but at the same time China is investing in Africa. The world economy today is more closely interconnected than ever in history. Today, capitals of various origins mix under national labels. Today's infographic teaches us that what we see is not always what we look at. Moreover, there is a lesson to be learned that economic powers cycle through the ages. Greetings to you, and I encourage you to watch the remaining episodes on our channel. I invite you to comment on this material in a substantive way.